I just always wanted to know, you being known as a whiskey man, did you always love whiskey?
Yes.
Or it grew upon you?
Well, I had a very naughty uncle who, when I was about 9, 10, something like that, poured me it was some teachers.
Really?
Yep. And I just think he wanted to see what reaction he was going to get from me. And I think he thought I was going to taste it. And I didn't. I tasted and thought, wow, this is fantastic.
Wow.
And so after I drank it, I literally kind of had that Charles Dickens moment, you know, and just said, can I have some more? And my brother was there, my older brother was there, and he was actually quite shocked. And my uncle was in the process of just pouring the second one. And my aunt walked in, and all hell broke loose. She wasn't at all impressed with what he was doing, feeding whatever it was, a 10-year-old.
Just 10?
I was 10.
You were a 10-year-old boy?
Yeah.
And your uncle made you drink whiskey?
He didn't
wow.
make me.
And you loved it?
He asked if I'd like it, and I said yes. I mean, he didn't hold a gun to my head. And I said yes, and I absolutely loved it. And after that, it wasn't unknown for me to occasionally nip into my parents' cupboard and help myself to a little drop of whiskey now and again. But the thing is that I never got drunk or, you know, in fact, in my entire life, I've only been drunk 5 times.
Only 5 times?
5
then
times.
You drink whiskeys, you taste whiskeys all the time?
One was completely by accident.
Yeah, okay.
Well, one was on my 21st birthday, and I had my drink spiked, so that was one of them. Another one, I was drinking a really powerful cider, and I didn't realise how powerful it was, and bang, it just hit me. So that's 2. And the other 3 was probably just a little bit of overindulgence. But I don't like the feeling of being drunk. I don't like the feeling of not being in control. And so I drink in moderation. Of course, with my working full-time with whiskey and tasting all of the time, swallowing is not always a good idea. So yeah, whiskey has always been a part of me for the last 50-odd years, and I've always loved it.
So you are a celebrated author, and you have been a journalist. So we would like to have a peek in your life. When did you start your journalism?
When I was at school, actually. I was.
You had been quite early in all things.
Yeah, I've been writing
really?
I've been writing a long time.
Really?
And when I was at school, on my early summer holidays, I worked on a farm. I loved the countryside. And then, from the age of about 14 or 15, I spent my summers working in the newspaper office. So I was learning with professional journalists from a very young age. In fact, what happened was that my first ever writing was on cricket. So on a Saturday, I'd go out and report on cricket matches for the local newspaper that in those days, on a Saturday, would cover the sport in the area and would come out on a Saturday night. So during the summer, I did cricket, and during the winter, I did football.
Okay.
And so by the time I was actually 16, I was offered 3 jobs. And I thought I was going to go to university and do all that stuff.
Right.
And a very, very famous football commentator called Brian Moore, who was probably Britain's leading commentator at that time. I was covering a football match at Luton Town for a paper. And after the game, Brian Moore had been covering it for TV. And I met him afterwards. And I told him that I'd been offered 3 jobs. What do I do? And he said, don't even think about sixth form. Don't go to university. He says, leave school now, join a news agency. You'll be working with professional journalists. And by the time you're 21 and thinking of leaving university and looking for a job, you will be working for the top papers or working in TV or what. And at 21, I was working in Fleet Street in the national newspapers. He called it absolutely right.
Wow.
So all this training that you get, but it does not, it is no substitute for actually working on the job, working with genuine professional people. Theorizing is one thing. reality is another thing, and it's the same in whiskey. A lot of people theorize about whiskey. Every day I work with it, and I actually understand the reality, which probably makes the Whiskey Bible a bit different, because, you know, I'm a consultant blender, and I'm a long-time writer. So I can marry those two things. So I learned on the job. In journalism, I learned on the job in whiskey.
That's wonderful. So when you were covering sports, did you also pursue some sport as yourself?
I actually wanted to be a professional cricketer, actually.
Cricketer?
I wanted to be
You played cricket?
I played cricket, yeah.
Wow.
And I gave up about 10, 15 years ago. Too many injuries. I batted. I was learning bat, and I batted for a long time, and I was getting cramp all the time, and it was really painful. And they later discovered that all my tendons were shorter than they should actually be. Now, by that time, I was a champion runner as a kid. You know,
You were an athlete as well.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Doesn't look like it now. But I tell you something. The first time I was ever in a newspaper, it came about, I was, about 13, 14? Mm-hmm. And I'd taken part in a cross-country race for my age group, and I'd won it by miles.
Wow.
Right. So the teacher said to me, look, we got the 18-year-olds now starting.
Yeah.
We're two runners short.
Yeah.
You've just won this race. Do you think you can go again and
you did.
and take part in a second race? And I thought, yeah, why not? So I did. So I ran, and having won the first race, I came second in the second race against people about 4 years older than me.
Wow.
And so the local paper picked the story up, and the headline, this was the first time I was ever in a paper, and the headline said, "Busy Jim keeps on running." That was the headline. And I've often thought about that, because when I'm writing the Whiskey Bible, which takes 4 months of tasting for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, I mean, 12 hours minimum.
12 hours a day?
Minimum. And it's basically cross-country. It's piling on, it's going through that pain barrier and the concentration levels, and seeing that goal, that tape at the end. And I think I've always had that competitive, that ability well, cross-country and those kinds of sports are a discipline. There's a right way of doing it and a wrong way of doing it, and you do have to be dedicated.
Okay.
It's the same about whiskey. It's a discipline, and you have to be very dedicated in what you do. Yeah.
So you always excelled to excel.
Yeah, so I think so. I'm never satisfied with what I do. I always think I can improve it. So people say, oh, your books are sold in their millions. You must be very happy. And I think, yeah, but maybe I could have done better. I'm never 100%.
So how many books have you written so far?
A lot.
In totality? Yeah, I know, a lot. If you can put a number to it.
I genuinely don't.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right.
No.
So writing has always been your calling.
It's been my calling. But the funny thing was, there was a blender for J&B, Jim Milne, and it was he who actually told me that I should publish my tasting notes. Because what I'd done is that when I first started writing about whiskey, I was writing about the people.
Okay.
And I was writing about the histories.
Okay.
And because as a journalist, I would do stories quite a lot in Scotland. In fact, I was on a massive, I used to specialise in murder cases, actually. It was pretty...
Writing about murder cases?
Yeah, I did. My speciality was investigations and murder. And one of the most notorious mass murderers came from Scotland, and he came not far from Speyside originally. So I ended up in that part of Scotland, which gave me the perfect opportunity to visit all the distilleries. And it was not unknown to see me back in the 1980s when I'd wrapped up my story and I had nothing else to do. Instead of going back to the hotel, I would disappear to a distillery. And in those days, there was no tourism.
And when was that?
This was in the early 80s.
Early 80s.
In the early 80s. And I would then work in a distillery
Wow.
quietly, and I was being taught how the stills worked, how to turn all kinds of things. So behind the scenes, I was learning. I was absorbing all this stuff. And then, I was doing that instead of going back to the hotel and sitting, around drinking in the pub.
Absolutely.
I was actually in a distillery. And then the next day, of course, I was then back to work and, doing the thing. And then if time was free again, I'd be back up to a distillery. So that it was different in those days. You couldn't do that now.
Yeah.
There isn't even the staff because they've pared down the number of people working in distilleries. But in those days, there was a lot of people. And I just used to go, hello, Jim. And they would show me how to run the stills, the timing of the stills, and so on and so forth. So I really learnt on the job from amazing people, none of whom are around today because it was so long ago. This is over 40 years ago. And these people that I learnt from were then very, very experienced people. They're in their 40s, 50s, 60s.
Yeah. So while doing all this, your journalism and your writing books on sports and stuff, what exactly, made you switch full-time to whiskey writing, or not whiskey writing, towards whiskey, working?
No, you were right, to whiskey writing.
Something that triggered that this is what I really want to, and I should leave this and move on there. A moment, if you can describe it in a moment.
I don't like to do things that other people have already done.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a bit like when you're a cross-country runner. I always used to lead the field.
Yeah.
I tried to burn off the rest. So I wouldn't sit behind a bunch of people and then burst through. I used to head the field and then say, catch me if you can. So I was ahead of the rest.
And I'm sure you...
And I would just demoralize those behind me and just keep on going. So I like to go into new lands ahead of anyone else. And with whiskey, what became quite clear to me very early on was that there wasn't anyone who actually felt whiskey.
I mean, you had a...
Well, but what I mean by that is there were wine writers who wrote about whiskey.
Yeah.
And there were beer writers who wrote about whiskey, and there were kind of generalized spirit writers. But there were no whiskey writers. And I think to write about whiskey in the way that a wine writer writes about wine, you've got to understand all the nuances. You can't be a wine writer and then be a specialist whiskey writer, because these are two entirely different things. Entirely different.
Yes, it's completely
So
different.
I don't try to write about wine. I know a fair bit about wine, but I won't write about it because I don't know enough about it.
Yeah.
There's so much I don't know.
Yeah.
So why should I give people an opinion about something I don't know about?
I mean, leaving a flourishing career with the national newspaper as a journalist,
Yeah.
and you moved towards whiskey.
Well, I went from earning a lot of money to nothing overnight, because people who sailed around the world or found a new land and explored it never ever did it without going through pain.
Yes, that's true.
Right. And so therefore I had to create a demand for whiskey writing. It wasn't there.
It wasn't there.
And I literally had I was knocking on doors, I was ringing editors, ringing magazines, and I don't just mean in Britain. Chicago Tribune, the whole works around the world. Do you want anything on whiskey? And I remember one editor or features editor said, whiskey, that's one up from meth, isn't it? Why don't you write something on wine? And I thought, you idiot. You bloody idiot. And so that was a kind of nonsense I was dealing with in those very early days. And I was determined to break this cycle of almost snobbery against whiskey. And so I did. But it was hard. I'm not saying it was easy. It was very, very hard.